Welcome to Copilot Podcasts. You know that feeling when your shoulders are so heavy with life's weight that you can barely stand? Today, we're exploring something revolutionary, the ancient promise of divine rest that's more relevant than ever. We'll uncover how 4 powerful biblical verses work together to offer a path from exhaustion to renewal.
And this couldn't be more timely. In our fast-paced world, people are desperately searching for authentic rest and renewal.
Let's start with Matthew 11:28. It's this beautiful invitation that says, "Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest." What's striking about this verse?
You know, what's fascinating is that this invitation wasn't just about physical tiredness. According to biblical scholars, Jesus was speaking to people who were worn down by religious laws and expectations.
Wait, so this was actually a pretty radical message for its time?
Absolutely. The religious leaders had placed immense weights on people's shoulders. Jesus was offering something completely different, a relationship rather than a rule book.
That's really interesting because it kind of mirrors our modern experience, doesn't it? We're all carrying these heavy expectations.
Exactly. And that leads us perfectly into Psalm 55:22, which says, "Cast your burden upon the Lord, and he will sustain you."
Tell me more about this idea of casting our burdens. What does that actually mean?
Well, the biblical meaning of cast is really about actively throwing or releasing something. It's not passive at all.
So it's more like deliberately choosing to let go?
Exactly. And historically, this concept was so important that it appears throughout Scripture. The Apostle Peter even echoes it in the New Testament, saying, "Cast all your anxiety on him because he cares for you."
You know what's striking me? There's this progression happening. First, there's an invitation to come when we're weary. Then we're told to actively cast our burdens.
Yes, and then it builds further with Isaiah 40:29, which adds another layer. He gives power to the faint and increases the strength of the weak.
That's fascinating because it's not just about getting rid of burdens, it's about receiving something in return.
Right, and according to biblical scholars, this verse was written during a time of exile and hardship. It was a reminder that even in their weakest moments, God was ready to provide strength.
So it's not just about surviving, but actually finding new strength?
Exactly. And this isn't just physical strength. It encompasses emotional, mental, and spiritual renewal.
You know, I'm seeing a pattern here. Each verse seems to build on the previous one.
That's right, and it all culminates in Hebrews 4:16, which invites us to come boldly to the throne of grace, that we may obtain mercy and find grace to help in time of need.
Hold on, that word boldly really stands out. Why is that significant?
It's significant because it shows a complete transformation. We start as weary people, but end up approaching with confidence.
That's quite a journey from exhaustion to confidence.
And what's remarkable is how these verses work together. They form a complete picture of divine support.
Can you break that down for us?
Think of it like this. Matthew 11:28 is the invitation. Psalm 55:22 tells us what to do with our burdens. Isaiah 40:29 promises strength. And Hebrews 4:16 shows us the result, confident access to grace.
You know, it's interesting how this applies to modern life. We're all carrying something, aren't we?
Absolutely. Whether it's work stress, relationship challenges, or spiritual doubts, these verses speak to all of it.
But it's not always easy to let go, is it?
No, and that's why it's described as an active process. It takes practice and trust.
Speaking of practice, how do people actually apply this in daily life?
Well, according to spiritual leaders and counselors, it often starts with simple daily practices, prayer, meditation on these verses, and regular reflection.
And I imagine community plays a role too?
Absolutely. In fact, Galatians 6:2 encourages us to carry each other's burdens. It's not meant to be a solitary journey.
You mentioned earlier about how this was radical in Jesus' time. How is it still radical today?
In a culture that often glorifies busyness and self-reliance, the idea of surrendering our burdens and accepting help is still countercultural.
That's a really good point. We're not always great at admitting we need help.
And that's exactly why these verses are so powerful. They give us permission to acknowledge our need for support.
Let's talk about that transformation from weariness to strength. How does that typically happen?
According to pastoral counselors, it's usually a gradual process. It starts with small acts of trust and builds over time.
So it's not usually an instant fix?
No, and that's actually part of the beauty of it. It's about developing a sustainable relationship rather than seeking quick solutions.
That reminds me of what you said about the historical context, how these verses emerged from real struggles.
Yes, and those struggles weren't so different from ours today. People felt overwhelmed, anxious, and in need of rest.
It's almost comforting to know that these are universal human experiences.
And that's why these verses have endured. They speak to something fundamentally human, our need for rest and renewal.
What about people who might be skeptical about this whole concept?
That's a fair question. The invitation is there, but it's always a personal choice. These verses don't demand, they invite.
And that invitation is always open?
Yes, that's one of the most beautiful aspects. There's no expiration date on finding rest and renewal.
As we wrap up, what would you say is the key takeaway from these verses?
I'd say it's that we're not meant to carry our burdens alone. There's a divine invitation to find rest, cast our cares, receive strength, and approach grace with confidence.
That's really powerful. And it starts with simply accepting the invitation?
Exactly. Just like Matthew 11:28 says, it starts with, "Come to me."
And then taking that active step of casting our burdens?
Yes, followed by receiving strength and approaching grace with confidence. It's a beautiful progression.
You know what strikes me? This isn't just about getting rid of burdens, it's about transformation.
That's exactly right. It's about moving from weariness to strength, from burden to freedom.
Well, this has been incredibly insightful. Any final thoughts?
Just remember, the invitation to rest and renewal is always there. It's not about being perfect, it's about being present.
Thank you for joining us on Copilot Podcasts. Remember, sometimes the bravest thing we can do is admit we're tired and accept the help that's being offered.
And that help is always available, just waiting for us to take that first step.
Until next time, may you find the rest you're seeking.